In this demonstration, we're going to show you how to work with a self-referencing tree structure. So we have here a table of employees. Each employee has a manager, or at least most of them have managers, which means that each employee works for another employee. To achieve this, we created a manager field, which is a reference field to the same business object, to the employee business object. So this creates a relationship where each employee works for another employee. Now, one of the things you would need to do in order to be able to fetch what we need is enable the accessor on the other side. So for each employee, we can see who are the employees in their collection, so the employees working for them. Now, by default, this would create a situation where you can go one level down in your hierarchy from an employee to their employee collection. But if your tree has more levels than that, then you should go and edit the endpoints to be able to drill down further. So, for example, what we're doing here is from an employee, we can drill down to see who are the employees, and this can go down multiple levels down your hierarchy. So right now we have 3 levels that we enabled in this hierarchy. So now let's go over to our page and we'll show you how you can fetch the information. So if you now go over to the employees business object and drag and drop it into your page, for example, as a table, when you would have your field selection, you would be able to pick up, for example, the name and the ID of the employee, and then you would have an object for the employee collection. And if you drill down over here, you'll be able to go over and see the name and the ID of the employee working for the first employee. And again, over here, you would have another level of the collection where you can go to the next level in your tree and get this information again, the ID and the name going down to the third level of your tree. If you now finish with the field selection wizard, you will see in a table this information. So you can see, for example, that Chris is working for him and Steve is working for Chris. Now the problem is that since this is a table, you only get one row for each manager, okay? And in some cases you have more than one employee. So in that case, you would want to use a tree component to show this type of hierarchy. So Oracle Jet provides this tree component that you can use. It's called the OJ Tree View component, and we're going to add this into our page. Okay, so we're going to go into the code level over here, and just above the table, we're going to create another area for our tree. So we'll define a little div with a class of OJ Flex. Okay, so this would give us this area where our tree is going to be. And then inside here, you can use the code insight to get the OJ Tree View component selected and add this to your page. And then close the div tag. Now what you would notice is that the tree is going to be marked as an error, and that's because we haven't added it to our required JS definition. Nice thing from Visual Builder, there's a quick fix that allows you to add the missing import, and this gives you the tree view component that you can use in your page. Now, inside the tree, you want to show some information. So if you go again back into the Jet sample, you would see that we have a template for the item inside the tree. We're just going to copy this template over and paste this into the code of our tree over here, like that. And we're going to change the data that we're showing. We're not going to show the title, but rather we're going to show the name. There's also 2 classes there that show us the icons next to our items. All right, so now we have our tree view. The next thing we need to do is we actually need to get data into it. So we need the tree view to be based on something. If you look at the Jet sample, you would see in the info section that the tree is getting information from an array tree data provider. So this is a specific data type, a hierarchy data type that we need to implement. So to get this into our tree, let's first look at how the table fetches information. Okay, if we actually run our little page right now, The tree is going to be empty because we don't have any data in there. But if we monitor our network traffic, we'll see the fetch that is populating our table. And in the fetch, in the payload section, okay, over here from employees, you can see that we specify the names of the fields that we want to show. And you can see that we're doing it in several hierarchies. So basically, we have the 3 hierarchies specified over here. So let's copy this set of field names, and we're going to use it inside our application to populate the tree. So we'll start by creating an event in our page for when we enter the page. And we're going to add an action chain over here to fetch the tree data. So give it a name and create our action chain. The first step in our action chain is going to be to call our REST service. Okay, so we're going to add a REST call over here. And we're going to fetch information from the employees getAllEmployees endpoint. Okay, like that. Now over here we can specify the fields that we want. Okay, so this is a parameter to the REST call, and we're going to paste what we just got from the table. So this is the way that you specify that you want to go 3 levels down. Okay, so we get the ID and the name from the first level, then the employee collection for the next level, and then the employee collection of the employee collection. So this is the REST call. The next thing we need to do is we need to take our result from the REST and convert it into the right data type. To do this, we're going to add a call to a JavaScript function. We give it a name, the createTree function. It has an argument, and into this function, we're going to pass the results that we got from the REST call. Okay? Specifically, the array of items that we get as a result. Now we can go back into the function and write some JavaScript code to create our array tree data provider. I'm pasting here code from my previous blog on this topic, and I'll have a reference for it in this blog. Okay, so look at the comments. We need to import this array tree data provider item over here, so into our JavaScript code. And then we are using argument 1 as the original array and passing in attributes, which is the key attribute, which is ID. We want to see the siblings, and the relationship, the children objects are under the employee collection items. Now you can get this again if you look at the response from the REST call. You would see that each employee has this employee collection with items under it, which shows the employees working for it. Okay, so you have it in multiple levels over here. So this is what we're referring to when we say employee collection items inside our JavaScript over here as the children attribute. That's the pointer to the children attribute for each tree level. All right, so this is returning an array tree data provider. We need a variable that would host this, so we'll create our tree variable. We don't have this data type, so we're going to use an any data type here for this variable, like that. And then back in our action chain, after we call the function, we're going to use an assign variable to take the results from the function and assign them to this variable. So from our function, we'll get the results, put them inside our tree. And then the last step here is to go back to our user interface and to the tree object, to the tree view, and set the data for the tree to come from this new variable we created, our tree variable. Right, now we can go back to our design view. We would see the tree over here. If we'll actually switch to the live view, we can interact with the tree and expand the levels under the tree, and again going down 3 levels. Now what we did here is we have the full fetch of all the employees. Right? In many cases with a tree, you only want to start with the top level and not show all the levels as the top level. So to do that, we're going to modify our query, go back to the action chain and to the call REST, and we're going to add a queue parameter. Okay, so a query parameter. We basically just want to start with fetching just whoever is the top manager, so the person who doesn't have a manager. So our condition here is that the manager field is going to be null, and this would only give us one employee, and that's the employee that doesn't have another manager managing him. Okay, so if we now go back to our page designer, we can see Sean as the top level, and we can expand the levels below John just like that. Right, so we don't need the table anymore. We can remove it from here. Now, what happens if you have more levels in your tree? Okay, so right now we're just going down 3 levels. Okay, so you would need to tell Visual Builder how many levels you want to show here, and that's basically just repeating the steps we did so far in terms of going over to our endpoints and editing our endpoints for the employee collection, and continuing to go down the 3 levels to add more and more levels. So this allows us to expose this in queries. Okay, and again, you can just keep going down to the number of levels in your organization. And then the other place where you would need to change this is in the fetch, okay, in the calling of the REST service, in the mapping of fields. If you want to get another level of data, just copy the last level, okay, the employee collection, okay, and paste it after that. Okay, and add one more level of employee collection here. So this would give us, for example, 4 levels of information in our hierarchy. Okay, so we go over here, go back to our page, and now if we expand Sean, we can see not just 1 level, 2 levels, we can actually go to Tiffany and see the next level down in our tree. So this is how you can create self-referencing hierarchical trees in Visual Builder.